Hi guys, I hope you're doing well. I just wanted to make a quick video talking about something. You see, what I've noticed is that every once in a while a ballet dancer will post on their public social media accounts like Instagram or Facebook or Twitter about a political event. You know, their opinions about a political event, whether it's something that's happening in the world or something that's happening in their home country. For example, if a dancer is a Democrat and they post something supporting, say, Obama or Beto O'Rourke or Hillary Clinton, maybe a Republican might not be very happy with that. And I think that's kind of fair enough, you know, we all have different opinions. But then sometimes you read comments where people say things like, let's keep the politics out of ballet, or like politics has no place in ballet, so, you know, don't talk about politics. And I'm just kind of like, wait a minute, hold up. You see, the thing is, ballet's very origins are political. Ballet originated in 15th century French courts, where Queen Catherine was a big fan of what was then called court ballet, and she was all about spreading the love of this dance form, so to speak. Court ballets were kind of these big, fancy, elaborate productions with like really fancy costumes and really fancy stages. And it was kind of an art form that like the aristocrats and the royalty kind of used to entertain themselves, because court life was not always very interesting, or because a ruler wanted to kind of show off how like rich and fancy they were. So ballet was always, for a very long time, ballet was kind of tied to the monarchy. King Louis XIV so enjoyed dancing ballet that he established the Académie de Danse in France, that kind of eventually became the Paris Opera Ballet School. And like I said, ballet has been so intrinsically linked to the monarchy and was associated with it for such a long time, and this only changed with the fall of the French monarchy during the French Revolution and the defeat of Napoleon Bonaparte, when ballet kind of became more privatized, because, well, there was kind of no more monarchy for ballet to be linked to. But did this mean that ballet and politics decided to pull a Gwyneth and Chris and consciously uncouple? Nope. Much like how Gwyneth decided to diversify and move to new territories by starting a health and wellness pseudoscience website called Goop that sold $66 jade eggs for your vajayjay, ballet decided to move as well into new territories, specifically the land of the Fabergé eggs, Russia. Russia in the 1900s kind of had become the epicenter for the arts, you know, with the ballet roux and famous choreographers like Michael Fokine, and I'm sorry if I'm mangling that name, as well as, of course, famous ballet dancers like Anna Pavlova and Nijinsky. All this kind of changed when the Fire Nation attacked. With the advent of the Russian Revolution. Anything related to the aristocratic society was supposed to be purged in communist Russia. You know, it's kind of like the political revolutionary version of a Jews cleanse, where you think you're doing something good for yourself by getting rid of unwanted elements, but all that happens is that people starve and you lose water weight and then just end up being really grumpy. Which meant that ballet, which is like a totally bougie form of entertainment, was under threat. But then Lenin kind of saw the potential for ballet to have an appeal to the illiterate masses, because ballet was kind of like a wordless performance art, which had, greater appeal. And of course, choreographers and directors who were part of the ballet theatre were also very keen to preserve this art form, so they were totally like, yeah, Lenin, whatever you want, we will do. For example, let's take the story of Giselle. Instead of it being a tale of how rich, privileged white male was totally two-timing with his fiancée and Giselle, it became a story of class struggle instead, where an aristocratic prince takes advantage of like a poor peasant girl. And Giselle was seen as a female protagonist, a clear example of a good hero who was willing to sacrifice a lot for her ideals. In her case, risking Myrtha's wrath to save Albrecht. This was very much in line with like the Soviet ideals of good versus evil, like how they characterize the class struggle. The aristocrats versus the proletariats, good proletariats versus bad aristocrats, good communist system versus bad capitalist system. And in order to fit with those ideals, ballets like Giselle were remade to show a very clear struggle between good and evil, rich and poor. Or we can look at the example of Swan Lake, a ballet that's so deeply associated with Russia. One of the hallmarks of Swan Lake is how uniform and disciplined the corps de ballet is. They move in sort of straight, uniform, rigid lines to form kind of patterns and formations on stage.
Okay, ladies, now let's get information. I said, okay, ladies, now let's get information.
Which is not a coincidence, and very much similar to how the Soviet military was run as well. Discipline, straight lines, formations like in a military parade.
Okay, ladies, now let's get information.
And it's no coincidence that one of the hallmarks of the Russian corps de ballet, especially in something like Swan Lake, is how they follow these lines and shapes with such precision. And Swan Lake kind of again was reframed as a battle between not just good and evil, but class struggle as well. Rothbard became symbolic of the aristocracy, which the masses, in which case all the swan maidens and the pure Odette and the intelligentsia played by Siegfried had to struggle against and rise up against and overthrow, kind of like the proletariat overthrowing the feudal lords and basically the rich dudes. And of course under Stalin, the ending of Swan Lake was choreographed for there to be like a happy ending, where Rothbard is defeated, kind of to show the triumph of good over evil, the masses succeeding to overthrow like the rich bad dudes, communism succeeding over capitalism, and all that good stuff. Swan Lake kind of became so entwined with Russian Soviet ideology that it was pretty much compulsory viewing for every important visiting person, every single like fancy head of state or world leader who visited communist Russia was pretty much treated to a performance of Swan Lake. Swan Lake was broadcast on television in Soviet Russia during official days of mourning, or when prominent members of the Soviet leadership died, kind of as a stalling tactic as well to buy time while the rest of the Soviet leadership kind of decided on a succession plan. It was broadcast on state television by hardline communists attempting to overthrow Gorbachev's more moderate communist government. Swan Lake was also used as a soft power tactic. Soviet leadership was convinced that by showing this ballet to American audiences, it would plant the seeds of class struggle within them and expose them to the ideas of how the mass proletariat could rise up and overthrow, the evil American capitalist overlords. And of course, there were the defections of Baryshnikov and Nureyev and Maharova during the 1970s. Defections, high-profile defections, which were seen as a blow to the USSR and a victory for the West. And don't even get me started on Red Poppy, which was this ballet created in the Soviet era. It was totally weird and racist, and it was supposed to, make Mao Zedong happy, but kind of ended up pissing him off, which contributed to deteriorating Russia-Chinese relations, which eventually led to the Soviet-Sino split. Ballet continues to remain political. We just kind of have to look at say how ballet training is done in Russia versus say America, where in Russia they have more centralized schools of learning. The Vaganova Ballet Academy and the Bolshoi Ballet Academy, with their own very distinctive and specific styles and approaches to training, versus the democratization of ballet in America, where there are so many different individual schools of learning as opposed to centralized schools. And all these ballet academies in America have different styles and different methods and different approaches to teaching ballet. Or we could just look at Balanchine, who was pretty much an unabashed lover of politics, enjoyed talking about it, enjoyed voting. Stars and Stripes is his own personal ode to American nationalism and patriotism. Or Flames of Paris, a ballet about the French Revolution. Or Ratmansky's revival of The Bright Stream, which was a banned Soviet-era ballet. How gender politics has led to a small but, constant discussion about the form of ballet and whether it's an art that's seen specifically through the male gaze of a passive female, or more overtly with the recent Me Too movement that led to the ouster of Peter Martins from NYCB, as well as some very prominent dancers of the New York City Ballet like Chase Finlay and Amar Ramazar. Not forgetting English National Ballet's She Said, which is a triple bill featuring works exclusively from female choreographers. Or you can even look at how international politics and American politics influenced the creation or inspired certain ballets, such as Crystal Pipe's The Statement, currently being performed in NDT's repertoire. It's a ballroom ballet which sees several different individuals struggling for power. The point is, if you want a ballet dancer to stay in their lane and only talk about ballet, well, they are staying in their lane when they're talking about politics, because politics has always been linked to ballet. Like I said, ballet's very origins were political, and ballet continues to be used by politics, inspired by politics, dictated by politics, influenced by politics. And that's because dance and ballet and art doesn't exist in a bubble. It's influenced by everything around us in society, social factors, economic factors, political factors. All of this serves to inform and inspire art. It doesn't just inspire the creation of art or influence the way art is created, but it also has, direct impact on how art is disseminated and viewed as well. For example, take the case of Brexit. Brexit affects migration, it affects the economy, it affects intellectual property rights, it affects the import of goods, and all these things would affect the ballet company. It would affect maybe how a company tours around Europe, the rights of a ballet, the salary of the dancers, and the ability of a ballet company to bring in foreign dancers, things like that. And that brings me to one final point, which is that why should ballet dancers only be allowed to talk about the more technical or overt aspects of their job, like what they're performing on stage, how their rehearsal went, how nice or not nice their costume was or is, and how they're training? Because that expectation is not placed on other people as well. If you're a plumber, are you only expected to talk about plumbing on your social media accounts? Will people shut you down and say, hey, keep your personal life out of plumbing, keep politics out of plumbing? Nobody does that. Dancers are individuals too, and politics and world events and socio-economical events affect all of us as individuals. And so if we are allowed to talk about and express our views on politics on our social media accounts and publicly, why shouldn't dancers too? And maybe even though you disagree with somebody, just remind yourself that, on the other side of that Instagram post is an actual person with feelings and emotions too. And yes, you have a right to express the fact that you don't agree with them. And maybe even though you disagree with them and you would like to express that, remind yourself that there's another person on the other side too writing that post, a person who believes strongly in what they are saying and has feelings and is human and is vulnerable and can get hurt and is putting themselves out on a limb by talking about this when they could just be talking about safe things like how pretty their tutu was. And maybe talk to them as if you would want to be talked to. And just remember to be kind even when you're expressing a contrary opinion. It's easy to forget that we're talking to people when we're just dashing out things on the keyboard. But words can be hurtful, and they can also be helpful. So I think that's also something to think about, and I think healthy discourse can only be a good thing. But let's try to do it in a constructive and helpful and kind manner. And that's all I have to say, guys. Thank you for coming to my Tondu talk, for the lack of a better word. And I hope you have a good day. Bye.